Okay, guys. Maybe let's get started. Panelists, are you guys ready? Okay, awesome. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. I'm Susan Malik, founder and the CEO of CloudHub, welcoming you to this webinar. And we are going to talk about modernizing your data strategy with the data mesh architecture. We have elite panelists from the industry like Amazon Web Services and Elevance Health, who are really going to talk about and giving their actual experience, a real-time experience on how they have implemented data mesh architecture, how they have built blockchain to build data governance, so on and so forth. So I hope this session is going to be quite interesting and insightful, right? When you are thinking about modernizing your data strategy and you are trying to bring insights out of the data, right? So we are in today fast-paced and data-driven world, business are constantly challenged to stay ahead of the curve, right? You must have witnessed the companies like Kodak, BlackBerry, Nokia, who used to be the industry leader, right? But they are struggling today in their business. It's because they were not able to understand the pulse of the customers. They couldn't bring insights out of the data, right? Hence, they're out of the game today, right? With data becoming the lifeline of organizations, and also we call it data is the new oil. So the evolution of generative AI, machine learning, blockchain, there is significant need for a robust data modernization strategy. So today, we are here to explore how organization can embark on a transformative journey, leveraging data modernization to unlock the unprecedented for growth, efficiency, and innovation. So throughout this session, we'll delve into the key components of successful data modernization strategy, understanding the challenges and potential roadblocks that may lie ahead. So our expert speakers, they will share valuable insights and best practices to help you to formulate a roadmap tailored to your organization's unique needs. So without further ado, let's dive deep and let's have a quick introduction. So we have in the panelists, we have Beep Shukla. Maybe Beep, welcome to Cloud Hub's webinar. So maybe can you give a quick introduction about yourself, Beep?
Hey, thank you, Sushant. Hey, hi all. Very excited to be here. Hopefully, this session give you some insights and pointers in moving your data strategy and data implementation, as Sushant said. So I'm currently working as a kind of lead principal to lead the development of enterprise data platform, ML platforms for global financial services customer as part of professional services. I cover the customers in EMEA and been in IT for a long time, but working in public cloud and building operational and customer data platforms to drive those digital and business transformation across different industry like finance, retail, and travel hospitality. And that gives me a lot of insights and learn a lot of best practices and what not to do and what to do in those kind of areas. Based out of London, I love to spend time with my kids and dogs and cats, and hopefully this session will be useful. Over to you, Rajiv.
Sure, Babes. Thanks. Are you guys able to hear me? Hi, this is Rajiv Ranjan. I have been working with Sushant and No Babes over a decade now. We have done many transformation projects across the geography, including Asia Pacific, Europe, and here in US. And throughout my career, I have gathered invaluable experience and insights from different cultures and industry. I got an opportunity to work. My primary expertise lies in the area like life sciences and healthcare, where I have primarily contributed to various aspects of clinical R&D, regulatory affairs, compliance, and safety. I'm currently engaged with a healthcare clients and healthcare domain. I'm working for Blue Cross Blue Shield Anthem, which is now Elevance. and primarily looks into the payer, both from a commercial and government standpoint, and also the providers landscape. Over the last years or so, I have gained enough hands-on experience on the emerging technology to stay at the forefront of innovations. I'm currently working in the era of blockchain and Web3 technology, particularly around Hyperledger Fabric, Ethereum, smart contracts.
Thank you. Thank you.
And yeah, really looking forward for for this webinar today, and hope we'll able to share our experiences with you guys.
Thank you. So I can maybe quickly introduce myself. As I mentioned, I'm Susan Malik. I'm the founder and CEO of CloudHub. So I have more than 23 years of experience, particularly in the IT field, and I'm also ex-Amazon. I spent 5 years in Amazon as a principal architect and leading the consulting services for global team for healthcare and life sciences. But prior to that, I was also with Cognizant for almost 15 to 16 years, where I was mainly responsible for driving business and data modernization strategy, adopting the cloud. So in the last 20 plus years, right? So my focus is more on how we can help customers to digitize their business, how we can bring the data, right, and get the data to insights and help customer to transform their business, right? So you talk about the modern age technology, like there's cloud computing or machine learning or artificial intelligence or blockchain or IoT and all that. So I have worked on those technologies very extensively, and as we speak, we are helping many customers in building the data maze, Web 3.0 technologies, and doing the white glove services for them, like end to end, all right, and to ensure that the customer is successful in driving their data modernization strategy. So with that, maybe let's start. All right. So I think all of you know, right? Every organization, they have the aspiration to be a data-driven company or data-driven organizations, right? Because data is the new oil, right? Everyone wants to get insights out of the data, right? And as per the Gartner report, we have seen that is 74% of the companies where they want to grow with the big data, right? And also on the same time, 75% of the companies, they're trying to, not say they're there, but they're trying to, join the bandwagon of what I called machine learning and artificial intelligence, right? And 90% of them, they are thinking about, how they can adopt the data-driven culture in transforming their business. But in the reality, right, only 35% of those organizations are being successful in implementing big data, or you can say data driven strategy, right? Because 90% of the customers struggling with the data privacy or the data security, and that's where people are not able to move from point A to point B, right? And on top of that, right, because we have seen the data silos and the data is being trapped in silos and different technologies, whether it's a mainframe or the legacy systems, like think about any power solutions, or sorry, any legacy solutions is being trapped, right? So they are being failed because 80% of them, they are not able to integrate the data with the modern strategy, right? So what is the solution then, right? So before we dive deep, let's quickly talk about how the data maze and the blockchain really can help us to bring the data governance. Because what I have seen in the industry for last 10, 12 years, right, while I'm driving some of this data innovation strategy, data governance and data sharing is one of the biggest challenge the customer is facing today, right? And how data mesh and data and blockchain can really bring that culture and help customers to establish a robust data governance, right? But before getting into the details, let's quickly talk about what is the approach for the data modernization strategy, right? But before we talk about the data mesh and some of the concepts, let's understand the history of the data architecture, right? And say everyone in this webinar must be knowing about data warehousing, which started back in 1960, right? And the concept was being brought by Bill Inman and Ralph Kimball, and which supports your business intelligence and then dimensional modeling and business reporting and so on and so forth. But it was very centralized and it was driven by only the IT team. But you know the ETL was one of the biggest challenge. If I need to bring new data, if I need to, you know, add new columns, it was a big challenge. And that's where the data lake came in, where data lake comes and talk about, okay, how we can store the data in its original format and model it later. So instead of ETL, you talk about ELT, right? You first extract, then load, and then transform. And then we have seen the evolution of, the cloud computing. Because of that, now the lake house is quite popular, right? So where you bring the concept of both data warehousing and the data lake and combine that approach to build your lake house, right? But off late, we have seen data mesh architecture, right? It's getting popular day by day because it talks about decentralizing the data lake strategy and how you can build a centralized governance on top of it. Obviously, Beeb is going to dive deep on that aspect, right? So let's quickly talk about what is the data modernization strategy and why you should think about it, right? And what does it mean? So that means modernization strategy talks about how you can move beyond the monolithic data lake, right? Because if you think about today, everything is very centralized. If I want to understand, if I want to onboard a new data source, is quite challenging because today this entire big data analytics strategy and implementation is just being driven by the IT team, right? Where a business has very little role. So that's why you need to think about how we can move beyond that and build a loosely coupled architecture, right, for your data strategy. Similarly, you need to think about building a distributed data pipeline, not a single pipeline, but you need to distribute that data pipeline so that in a single click your data is being pushed from source A to source B, and then you will be able to get your data visualization on top of it, right? So data to insights through product-driven approach will pave the way for the data democratization. What data democratization means? That means how the customers can give the data to everyone in the organization so that they will be able to contribute more for making the data more powerful, right? So with that, maybe this is the right time now to hand over to you to talk about some of your modern data architecture approaches using data mesh. So over to you, Bib.
Hey, thank you, Shashank. And so it's always a challenge, right? So becoming a data-driven business is really hard, right? So, and if you look at some of the reports produced by Harvard Business Review, like every company wants to be data-driven, but only 1/4 of that becomes successful data-driven. So what does that mean? That means using data to drive certain decisions and certain strategy for their business, right? So we talk to our customers to understand if there is a way to solve those challenges, right? To make more and more organizations becoming data driven, right? And always the start is to understand the use case, the business problem, the business value, right? When working backwards from that to define your data strategy, right? And that because like what's happening now, 6 months down the line will change. Number of data sources will keep on growing, and more data sources, and then which producing more and more data every year, right? So the foundation of the data strategy requires that you have a flexible and cost-effective storage because it needs to scale and at the right price performance point. The ability to catalog and create metadata for all your data, because that makes it usable for the consumers or for the business users, right? But making that available, especially solutions like marketplace and data marketplace and things would really democratize the data to wider business community. And then I think Sushant touched on a few things as well. The ability to apply the data governance, right, to meet your regulatory and compliance need, wherever it may be stored, right? It might be stored in multiple different places, but to be able to provide the right governance, data governance for that specific at that point of the data storage. And then what other things we found out that there's no one solution fits all the use case. So you need to have purpose-built like databases, analytics, and data lakes and machine learning to get value out of your data foundation, right? What data foundation you built for your organizations. So driving from your business value, working backwards from that will also help you to justify building those foundation data and AML capability, and it will help you to set the business case as well, right? And the last point here on this slide is to kind of looking at not only from technology but overall operating model, right? So when I talk about the operating model is more people, process, and technology, right? The three angle to decide what is the right solution, what is the right architecture pattern to build for your organizations. Next slide, Sharon. Yeah, thank you. And and if you look at while designing this data platform, these are, I mean, these are not all, but these are the 7 key data management and data governance principles you need to explore or understand for your organizations and define that, right? First one is the accountability. Who owns the data, right? Who is responsible for making sure data is cataloged, right? And the second bit is data accuracy, and is there a automated way of publishing those metrics for the consumers so they have a trust and confidence on the data we're building, right? And the data quality, defining those kind of rules to monitor the data quality, right? Data lineage is quite important, like especially when you are building kind of financial organizations. Like data lineage is quite critical, and also when you go into more the AML usage of the data, when the consumers start using the data, so having that consistent data and ML lineage is very important, right? Because of the new compliance regulations evolving all the time, and it's more and more requirements coming to manage that lineage. Operational excellence is always kind of a afterthought, and we take that into, we bake that into the initial design for monitoring and the pipelines to make sure that the consumers or the users are kind of notified of any issues and challenges. And security compliance is key, and it needs to be kind of baked into your design. It's ensuring, for example, data is encrypted at rest and in transit, and visibility who has accessed the data, right? You need to justify who somebody is accessing for specific business need. That needs to be covered. And the privacy is classifying all your data and defining those controls for the different classification is very, very critical. How you manage your data. Next slide. The, uh, I'll just come to like data mesh, right? So data mesh was one of the pattern because what Susan talked about is we evolved over the period of time from data lake to lake house to data mesh, and we also talking about transaction data lakes as well. So sharing data in the enterprise is can be challenging, right? And lines of business have made investment in cloud-based data lakes analytics that are purpose-built for a specific business problem. And it might not be applicable, might not be useful for other parts of the business, right? And what we're seeing is that for complex organizations, like centralized solutions has its own challenges and limitations. Because a central system could be kind of, delivery velocity could be quite low, and the aligning on the technology is going to be a challenge as well, because a different use case need different technologies. So aligning that technology for a central is very, really, really difficult. And typically, some of the business units wants to move faster, so speed is quite critical. So from a data mesh perspective, treat existing data platform as independent domains, right? And improves the data governance by pushing policy down into the data domains, right? So data domains, so the difference here is that the the local domains, the local business units, they understand the business, they understand the data in that. So that's very important that they manage the kind of they produce the data assets or data product. I'll talk about that few sorry, go back to the previous slide. Sorry. Uh, so, and then providing a clear mechanism to centralize the data discovery, right? So, because a lot of the times, if you collecting data, you integrate and ingest data, but you don't centralize that discovery from this multiple different domains, it's really difficult for consumers to search and find the specific data. They don't know where to search even, like, that takes a lot of time, and also baked into automation into it so that they can clearly justify the business need and automate the access to the data as well to accelerate that. And then self-service data sharing features is very important, right? So provides that capability part of that. So, and data mesh plays that kind of suffice some of these needs in that space. And data mesh is a organization's pattern rather than a technical pattern, because it caters into your organization structure, right? I talked about the people, process, and technology, and you need to look at those to understand that, right? Next one, Susan. So this is typical. I just want to share this slide because you might, most of you might have already seen this. But if you look at by definition, I mean, this was started from ThoughtWorks, 4 core principles, right? I will keep coming back to these 4 key principles, like data domain ownership, right? A data mesh features data domains as nodes, which exist in data lake accounts. It is founded in decentralization and distribution of data responsible to people closest to the data. So that's why we're talking about domain, because they have the business understanding of the data there. And data as a product, a data producer contributes one or more data products to a central catalog in a data mesh account, right? So where the consumers can search for the different data available and use that for their own kind of use case. And then federated compute governance, which is kind of is how data products are shared, delivering discoverable metadata auditability across a federated decision making. That's very important, right? So, and self-service sharing, right? The platform streamlines the experience of data users to discover, access, and use data products. And if you look at the difference between a centralized data lake and data mesh, because you need additional tools and technologies to allow to talk between this multiple data lakes. That's the difference here. And having a central marketplace where each of the data domains can share their catalog of data they have, right? And the third thing, which is kind of delegating that management of data and the access to the data owners, right? The producers. Those are the 3 kind of things to take from the slide. Next one. And this is kind of a standard architecture. Just run through the diagram here. On the bottom, you have the 2 producers, which is producing data products and registering them in the federated governance, and where consumers come and access those. On the top, you have 3 consumers. They are accessing different data through this central federated governance solution or mechanism, to be able to access the specific data. Obviously, that's, as long as they justify the access to the data for their business use case. So I keep coming back to those 4 principles I talked about, right? Data domain ownership. So here, the producer, which is the producer 1 and multiple producers, they owns the data created and transformed in their line of business, right? Because they understand the line of business, the domain knowledge, owns the data stored. They are responsible of maintaining the quality, the SLA for the data, and then how other line of business, they manage the access to that, but through this central mechanism, right? And I won't go into the AWS services, but we can cover this later on. I think Susan is going to cover also how CloudHub is helping in this space. The second bit is the data as a product, like, the data engineers. So each team manages their data, like, and they publish this to, when we talk about data as product, so they provide all supporting metadata, lineage, part of that data products, right? So data products are kind of registered into the central catalog or central marketplace. But the data producer will also produce all of this additional bit. Then the kind of principle 3 and 4, I quickly cover it, is covering the autonomy and how they can self-serve the access to the data through this mechanism. And the federated data governance, right? The decentralized implementation of governance team and the standard authorizations, right? Those are the key principles. Coming on to the customer example, like JPMorgan Chase is one of the early adopter of data mesh on AWS, and they have multiple data lakes within on AWS, and the data mesh is one kind of architecture or organization principle they follow to share data between different business units, right? And the key kind of business value part of it is the cost saving. They are able to access data in an efficient way, and then provide and bring and build agility within the kind of the data producer to produce those data assets for them. And here you know the two aspects. So when we talk about data as a product, so you have a customer and consumers are the customers, right? So you need to meet those need of the customer. So he's always working backward from the customers or the consumers need and building those data products. So you can't just build data as just data product yourself. You need to take into factor the consumer's demand or the need, right? That's very important, and that make them to scale quite quickly and becoming a data-driven organizations. So we share the link, and you can find out a bit more detail if required, and we can take follow-up questions. And then these are the Susan. Sorry, how long I have left?
No, yeah, I think 1 more minute if you can just
1 moment. Okay,
summarize.
I'll
Yeah.
just finish it quickly. So, some of the key organization principle I touched on. So, allowing the data producer to create the data model, provide an efficient way to safely find, publish, and securely exchange. We talked about that. Create a single model for identity and data classification. Operational controls is quite important. Building the logging and monitoring, auditing into this environment is very important. Mandate, because if you don't mandate these systems, these platforms used for data sharing, then this will not succeed, right? Then you'll have the similar challenges building silo data platform and not able to connect with each other. And setting the organizational goals on adoption and create an inspection mechanism and publicize the success for data sharing is it'll take you further in having the adoption for this organization. So hope that's useful. Obviously, we can take questions. So let me pass the cue to Rajiv and ask him to share his experiences on another decentralized and blockchain-based distributed ledger technology. So Rajiv, over to you.
Yeah. So Rajiv, before you just start, like I just want to announce also, like, no, you guys can just start sending your questions. So we are monitoring all the questions, and also we have kind of surprise for you. We'll have a winner, whoever is going to ask the best questions. You guys will get a $25 gift coupon, and we'll announce that in LinkedIn. Yeah. Over to you, Rajiv.
Sure. Thanks, Sushant and Babes. I will try building upon the foundation you have laid regarding the importance of data mesh strategy. Hello, friends. Thanks again for joining the webinar today. Over the next 15 to 20 minutes or so, we will explore how a well-defined and carefully crafted data strategy is not just a crucial element, but an indispensable foundation for the success and a widespread adoption of a blockchain-based distributed ledger technology. We call it as DLT. While blockchain has gained a significant attention and interest in the recent days, its true potential can only be realized when accompanied by a well-thought-out data strategy. If you look around currently, most of the enterprise data architecture, they are often centralized data ownership and control, and which is leading to a bottleneck and hinders innovation, not only for that organization, but across industry. In a highly specialized and domain-centric business ecosystem that we live today, it is practically impossible for any one organization or an entity to own and govern the data control that flows through and consumed by the ecosystem partner. And if you really listen to the industry analyst and the voice of the customer, I work day in, day out with this industry analyst, and I keep hearing that uh, and there's a commonalities where they are advocating for a need to have a consensus-based trust and decentralized model where data is treated as product and the ownership is distributed across the participating organization. I think that's where the data mesh strategy Sushant was talking about earlier plays a pivotal role in empowering the domain experts and fostering collaboration and accessing the data-driven decision-making capability. You heard BIPS clearly emphasized on the decentralization responsibility of the data and how you can put the accountability close to where the data is produced. It helps the organization move from a centralized data lake or a data warehouse to a domain-driven decentralization of data, underlined by those four core principles you remember BIPS was highlighting, right? The domain ownership, data as product, self-service data platform, and the federated computational governance. Once these four pillars are well established, and once your data ecosystem is in place, it can be used to fed either your legacy application, which is more or less centralized, as you can see here, or a blockchain initiative, or even it can be used to training the models. In today's world, the foundational model and transformers like ChatGPT. Now, talking specifically about blockchain, a decentralized data mesh solution can be designed under the hood to elevate the data infrastructure of the blockchain ecosystem, which I'll be talking shortly in the next slide, right? It has a significant impact to the organization that I have seen over the last few years. But like any other project, blockchain project cannot be successful if you don't have the right data mesh or the data strategy in place, right? So for any typical AI business use case, if you stitch all these three components together by migrating data from your legacy database to a blockchain-based infrastructure, it presents a transformative opportunity for training a machine learning model with enhanced data integrity and transparency. That's really the key today. Machine learning model heavily, as you know, it heavily relies on the quality and the reliability of our input data, right? So leveraging blockchain as an underlying data storage can greatly influence the accuracy and the robustness of these models. With the immutability capability, which I'll be talking shortly, and the provenance that is baked in the typical blockchain infrastructure, organization can confidently utilize the historic data records on this chain network to train a machine learning models and enable them to make more informed and precise prediction for a critical business decision making, right? So with that, now you have understood the concept and the context involved in the domain-centric data mesh strategy and blockchain. Let's dwell into some real-world example to see how these principles that Bips and Sushant has been talking, how we can apply this along with the blockchain in a real-life case study. Okay, so in order to illustrate and dwell and deeper into that concept of distributed technology, we have taken two case study today for the discussion. These are the real world example of some of the works that is happening in the industry today, and how the DLTs like blockchain are being applied in these two industry, healthcare and life sciences, to make an impact at scale. Right. The first case study is around the health record and how the patient episodes of care are being managed today through a EHR, blockchain-based EHR system, right? And I'll be talking in detail about this case study. But going to the second case study, which I'll just throw briefly a light on that, the life science industry that both me and Sushant and Bips have come from, where the blockchain technology has already helping the pharmaceutical customers to track, trace, and record how the drug shipments travels across the entire supply chain, and how the blockchain is being used today to help track and prevent the counterfeiting of drug that comes to the market, and how it helps in doing the drug and development. So these are the two case studies that I chose today. But for today's discussion, I'll pick the first one and take you through the journey of how the healthcare data is being managed using a blockchain Web3 technology. So as you know, and thanks Sushant for moving to the next slide. As you know, the current healthcare setup, the patient health data is held within the centralized system. And I think most of you would have seen wherever you are, your healthcare providers or the hospitals owns your data, right? They are controlled by the health institutions or the provider. In US, we call providers. That basically means the hospitals or the caregiving entity. But if you double click on that episode of Care, you will see right from the patient registration to health record creation to healthcare facility visit or being examined by the physician to a medical record update, the provider EHR system manages the patient's health information on a centralized server, right? These days they have migrated to cloud, but essentially it's a centralized system. But the ownership of data resides with this one single entity, and therefore they decide when, where, and how to share the data, the patient data, with the other partners. So they sometimes internally share with the facilities, or sometimes they even share with the external entity like diagnostic lab, pharmacies, or the insurance company. But
So, Raju,
at the
just like one more minute just for you, just because we're running out of time. So, if
sure.
you can just wrap up in one more minute. Thank you.
Sure, sure. Yeah, oh, sure. I'll do that. So that's where the complexity comes in, right? So because the data is centralized. And in all this complexity, patients often have a limited control and ownership of the data, right? Today, I, as a patient, do not have an easy access to my own health record, right? And that's where the decentralization technology is really important in the blockchain world, particularly in the Web3, where we have a potential to revolutionize these limitations that I spoke about. And with this decentralized approach, the patient data can be securely stored and accessed through a permission channel. This will allow the patient to retain control and ownership of the data. And this will empower the patient to share their information with a trusted party, researchers, all right, fostering the growth. Today, if I have a blockchain network, I may decide to share my fitness data with Amazon or Nike, and in return, they may compensate me with the coupons or a discounts that I can use it for any of the purpose. So just to conclude that this blockchain technology is a game changer in the industry. It is happening at a pretty rapid pace where the customer data or the data producer of the data gets the ownership of how they can share the data across this distributed network. Final takeaway, as you see, blockchain-based technology is pretty secure and transparent, right? By the very nature of the foundational, architecture, it eliminates the need for any intermediaries and reduce the risk for a data breach or the cyber attack. Right? In the previous diagram, you saw how each node in the blockchain network have a copy of the ledger, and before the transaction can be added to the ledger, all the node must agree, and that's the beauty of the blockchain network, where you build the consensus right before you transact the data across the participating partners. So with that note, I'll just close, and Sushant, back to you. If
Thank
there are
you.
any questions.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Sushant,
Raju.
we talked about our experiences with customers, right?
Mhm,
Me and Rajiv, right? So
mhm.
I know that you also working with few of the customers implementing some of the data platforms. So can you tell us a little bit more about how CloudHub is helping your customers? That'll be great.
No, no, absolutely. No, thank you, Beef, for asking that questions, right? Yeah. So in the last couple of years, right, I'm trying to help customers in different ways. But at Cloud Hub, right, our three focus is cloud engineering, data modernization, and the security and compliance, right? Because we talk about how data governance and data security, right? I think from AWS, we are coming from security is job zero, but I always add it's security and compliance that are always job zero, right? Because from regulatory industry perspective, compliance is one of the biggest aspect. So we are helping customers moving from point A to point B by providing the right strategy. For example, I have worked with one of the customers where we able to help them to build this uh, distributed or slash data mesh architecture for reducing their carbon emission or CO2 emissions. Okay, and also the vehicle conformance to as per the regulatory requirements. So we have we are getting the data from various legacy system. Think about mainframe, right? So think about SQL Server, Oracle, and even if think about any modern stores like IoT devices or Kafka, right? We are also getting the streaming data. So we help them to bring all the data into a data lake, and then we built a lake house on top of it, right? Using Snowflake, and then build UI layer on top of it, like using Tableau, so that they will be able to visualize the data and able to drive more business values out of it, right? So to achieve that, we have a framework, what I call DataCube Framework, which helps customers to move that point A to point B. If you look at this framework, right, it is widely used in the industry and it's aligned, and it is technology agnostic. That means this framework is going to work whether you are going to adopt AWS or Azure or GCP or any other cloud providers, is going to work seamlessly with that. And by using this framework, right, you will be able to ingest any data source, any data file format, whether it's a batch or streaming or flat file or relational database, right? And then also you'll be able to manage your data lake plus transactional data lake, right? What you were talking about earlier is something called data lake, right? You'll be able to manage your bronze, silver, gold, and then you can push the data into Snowflake or any other data housing solution like Redshift or Big Data, BigQuery, so on and so forth. So this framework is helping customer to build robust data governance and data security, and also able to manage automated continuous compliance. Because when you work with regulatory industries like healthcare or pharmaceutical or financial sector, you need to be always comply to the regulatory requirements, and that's where this framework is really helping the customers to reduce their timeline, deployment timeline by 30 to 40%, and able to save almost 60 to 70% of their cost when they're implementing it.
Cool. That's great. That sounds great.
Yeah, and
I,
even once get some kind of services or strategy, always reach out to me, and I'm able to help you to define your roadmap, the strategy, the planning, and then talk about what is the best tool, right, that you can bring in to the table, right? Because the industry is now, it's kind of hybrid model, is best of the breed, how we can bring from different vendors and build a solution.
And
cool.
Sushant, I clearly see this framework is going to help the company who wants to use the distributed technology to have the data in a way that can be used to extend it to the external partners, right? So,
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. There's a question, Sushant, from Saikat.
Okay.
In a use case where there are multiple business units, other data consumers, how would you recommend to implement federated governance model? Right?
Mhm.
Do you want to take
Yeah,
it, or I can take it as
yeah,
well?
yeah, you can take it up. Yeah.
Okay, so there's few things you need to consider, right? So one is somebody needs to provide the platform. So the platform team could be a centralized team, but here we're talking about building the data pipeline and bringing the data and transforming it and making it available, right? So, and that will be your domain-specific business units. If I understood your question correct, so you're saying, okay, you have multiple domain, they're building their own data assets in different data lakes. So how do you combine them to making it available to the consumers, right? I mean, on AWS, we got few tools. Lake Formation is one of the tools which allows you to share the resources, right? And share the catalog into a centralized governance catalog. So which you could further integrate that to marketplace. Like for example, if you go native like Data Zone, or if you go with our partner solution Informatica or Colibra, their governance tool and use their marketplace as well, right? So in that way you can make it available to your consumers. Hope that
Yeah, maybe I'll add one more
yeah, go
on
ahead.
top of it. Like, while obviously technology always plays a big role, but one step I would go beyond that, and what I faced when I was trying to implement such kind of solutions is the process change. Because today you need to you need to have that cultural change, right? How you can bring that cultural change by bringing what I called, 3P, right? Your technology, process, right? And people, process, technology. That PPT is very important. You need to ensure that customers are aware of it, this model, why, the data ownership is important, and why the business team should take that ownership to maintain that data, because they know that data better than any IT team, right, or any other person who is going to take the data, right? So that's where, we need to ensure that, there is kind of alignment with the business team. Obviously it's not easy. You need to talk, you need to have different workshops, and ensure that they come, to the same alignment.
Right, Sushant, I see there's a question on the blockchain from Venkat, and I'll just read it out.
Yeah.
He said, I'm glad to witness that the information shared we help enterprise enable blockchain in the pre-existing ERP and software on our private blockchain. Let's connect and discuss further about this collaborative opportunity. Sure,
Mhm.
Venkat, you can reach out to Sushant, and I'll just tell you from my experience that when you do that kind of a transition, data is something that you really need to relook into it, because the way the traditional ERP or the software, typical software are written in blockchain world, we do more of a DApp, or what we call a distributed application, or the peer-to-peer communication protocols. And that can be used, but for that you need to relook into how the application communicates with the different stakeholder or the partners. But yes, it can definitely be implemented. And but again, you need to define your business objective, what and why you need a blockchain. Blockchain cannot be used for every other solution possible. You have to have a valid reason why you want to implement blockchain. If it suffices those needs of a peer-to-peer connectivity and a distributed architecture, then definitely yes, you can implement it.
So, yeah, and we are extending, Q&A session, because we see some kind of interesting questions. So we are just going beyond a couple of minutes more. I hope the panelists, you guys are okay.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe Misha, I know you. Thanks for all, the coordination and collaborate. Are you seeing any other questions
Yes,
here?
we have one more incoming question.
Mhm.
So Sanjay asking, hello L, hello all. Thanks for this incredible information. Would you appreciate to know the data obfuscation strategy in this model? Thanks.
Deep, can you take that question out, maybe?
Yeah. So I think it's all boils down to your data classifications and the controls you have in place, right? So, for example, if you want to, because slowly, I think I mean, it's not a direct answer, but I'm trying to coming to the point. We're slowly moving from object-based access control to more attribute-based access control, right? And then you link that to your data classification, which allows you to implement the controls, the data access controls, right, as per your organization policy. And this, I think that kind of the data applications that is basically kind of related to some compliance requirement you're facing, or certain things. So that will allow you to do that centrally without a lot of management overhead, right? So that's quite key to understand how do you do that, right? So there's few mechanism you can do that. So depending on the solution you use on the AWS, you can use attribute based access control, and using open source library if required, or your own custom code based on your data model, and do that quite easily.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions? Do you see Bib or Rajiv in the chat, because I'm sharing. I'm not able to see any questions.
No, I don't
No.
see any question, but I think it's a question for Rajiv, right? Rajiv, I think you talked about blockchain and decentralized technologies. Like, how do you think the advancement in cloud is impacting kind of the mainstream blockchain and development in this space? What's your experience with your customers?
Yeah, sure. I'll share my experience. I want to say that no one will doubt that AI is slowly becoming a mainstream computational need for most of the business today. And I was recently listening to a discussion where someone made a great analogy by saying, if you consider AI ML as an electricity, then cloud would be the powerhouse. And because that's where the most of the LLMs or the foundation model will be developed, trained, and deployed. And I can share from my own experience in the last few months. I've spent a good amount of time working with Google Vertex AI Playground and Generative AI Studio to test and validate the hypothesis by building models in most robust and managed environment. Um, the automated model tuning and the deployment, and that really helps in reducing the manual labor and improve efficiency. What I really like about it, again, it boils down to a discussion we had, Bibs, earlier about the data strategy and the data ownership. The more you refine your data, clean your data, the better would be your model, right? I'm sure there are other cloud providers like AWS, Azure offers a similar capability. But the scale and the magnitude of the cloud computing and the storage capability that is emerging today will enormously help building the AI ML models and build this algorithm faster, right? I worked in many of projects where we have used blockchain as an backend entity to store the provenance and the auditability of the data, and then take that data and use to build more responsible AI. And right now, and in the industry, you keep hearing that people build models, but we don't know what's data being used to train those models. So I think that's where the cloud AI and blockchain really going to play a pivotal role in making sure that we live up to the expectation and be ethical in building those capability.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Rajiv. I think just to add to that, auditability and reproducibility in a consistent way for any of the kind of the AIML model, whether it's whether it's large language model, whether it's a specific business model you're building, is quite important, right? So and because of the lot of requirements coming from regulatory and compliance, they need to be able to do that. So that's why with cloud and defining a data strategy and a vision of the organization and choosing the right kind of architecture and organization pattern will definitely help in accelerating that journey.
Right.
Um,
We are all are trying to democratize AI ML landscape, and we often hear those BEPs that the AI may turn out to be a dangerous AI if we don't put an ethics and handle the underneath data in a responsible way. So you're right.
Yeah. And so not only Rajiv and Beeb, right? Obviously, right. So when you talk about how we can establish the reproducibility, and authenticating, right data and right strategy, right process. So it's very important. I always focus on, right, that how you should be able to automate that, right? And many of my focus also, I help customers automating that particular reproducibility part, right? And also validating the model, the infrastructure, the application, the platform, right? Underneath all those, the model, right? To ensure that when you are bringing up, for example, a SageMaker, right, model, right, underlying infrastructure, that should be also qualified, right? And how you should do that, you need to think about, okay, how we can bring in infrastructure as a code, how we can integrate security as a code within that infrastructure as a code, so that you will be able to you know reduce your blast up radius, right, from the security perspective. And then when you provision that, or before provisioning, obviously, to think about integrating that as part of your CI/CD pipeline, so that any changes you are making to your code base or your model is going through the pipeline seamlessly, no manual intervention. And when you provision them, to ensure that you have also a model, or some kind of mechanism to automate that testing up, approach, automate the testing, right? In the pharma world, whoever knows, right now we call it infrastructure qualification and then application validation. So that is important, and that's what we have also done, the automation. I do have a couple of frameworks for managing your automated continuous compliance and the security, from both, from the cloud perspective as well as from the AI ML perspective, yeah, if anyone is interested and to know more about, yeah, so reach out to me, so we can help. Okay, so I think with that, I think we are already 7 minutes past our the uh, time allocated to us. But no, thank you very much, Rajiv, Babib, and Misha for your time today. I think very insightful information. I hope the audience must be taking something out of this webinar, and they will be applying in their work. And guys, if you have any questions, any support you need, always reach out to us. And again, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate. Again, we have also a um, survey feedback. Here is the link, and also the QR code. You guys can just scan it, and provide us a feedback, so that we can improvise. As I mentioned before, we are going to have more and more such kind of interesting sessions, right, on the data part itself, because data is the new oil. So let's explore together, okay, and get more insights out of it. So with that, so again, I said enable, empower, and insight. So we need to ensure that we enable, your business. We empower you to take the right decisions, and once you are empowered, you get the right insights, which can help you to transform your business, and that's where we can help you. So yeah, you can contact me, for any of your need. So again, thank you very much, everyone. So we are going to look at all the questions, and as I promised, right, we will evaluate the questions, and we are going to announce the winner in the LinkedIn, right? So stay tuned for further update. Thank you very much, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you all.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
Thank you.